Show me the crypto. Show me the crypto. Show me the crypto.
In a world on the brink of disruption, two men will bring you clarity by interviewing some of the most intelligent and influential names in the blockchain world. Welcome to Show Me the Crypto with your hosts, Wade Patterson and Ulf Lonergan.
Well, hi there, and welcome to Show Me the Crypto. My name's Wade Patterson.
And I'm Ulf Lonergan.
We're a couple of friends from Canada who love learning about cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology, and we're happy you're along for the ride. Whether you're a crypto virgin or you know your way around the block, we hope our interviews with some of the most intelligent and influential people in the space help deliver you with value. And on this episode, we're joined by Natalie Brunell, an Emmy-winning journalist and host of two podcasts, Coin Stories and Career Stories. Natalie and her family immigrated to the United States from Poland when she was 5 years old, and at the time, they taught themselves English by watching news programs and movies on their television. Today, the tables have turned, and Natalie is the one with the audience. Her latest project, Coin Stories, has quickly ranked among the top 100 business podcasts and features some of the biggest personalities in the Bitcoin space, such as Peter McCormack, Anthony Pompliano, and Raoul Pal. Natalie, welcome to Show Me the Crypto.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we're excited to have you on, and you've become very good at getting the origin stories of your guests. So I want to flip the script and ask you, Natalie, what is your origin story?
Yeah, so you kind of mentioned part of it. I'm originally from Poland. I was born in a city called Łódź, which is in the center of the country. It's actually a pretty big city, I think the third largest after Warsaw. And my family immigrated to the Chicagoland area when I was 5 years old. So I grew up out here. And then I attended school in the LA area. I went to Pepperdine for my undergrad. I went to Northwestern for grad school, studied journalism in both, and I've been working as a broadcast journalist for the last 10 years or so.
In regards to teaching broadcast and digital journalism at the University of Southern California, I'll make sure I get that right. Has educating others always been a passion of yours?
You know, the reason that I really wanted to teach is because my industry, media, it's really a lot of hands-on skills, things that you can sort of practice in school, but really until you get out there and you're baptized by fire, you don't really understand how the industry works. And so I always wished that I had professors who were still working or more recently working in the media field or in, markets. And so I just kind of wanted to give back. I wanted to be the professor that I never had and give like real life experience of what the job is like. And, that kind of blends together both the aspects of what it's like to be out there and doing this as a career, but also the toll it takes on your personal life, and just kind of, be honest with them, how to get the job, how to approach people, how to ask for a bigger salary, in addition to doing all the storytelling and investigating and doing all the things you need to do to be a good reporter. So it's been a really fulfilling experience. And it also teaches me a lot because I understand sort of where the industry is headed and how young people think, even though, I still consider myself young. I'm like not that much older than them, but I feel like we're in such different worlds because I didn't grow up with, the social media that they did. The industry looked very different even just 10 years ago. So yeah, I've always had a passion for giving back and sharing knowledge and helping other people kind of go through obstacles in an easier way than I had to.
I studied journalism in college, and I wish I had someone like you that was giving me the actual information of, because some of the classes were just so focused on, okay, this is how you get a traditional newspaper job or that type of thing. But it'd be nice to have someone who is a little bit more forward thinking. One of the things I want to jump into before we get too deep into crypto is a tweet that you put out. So this was put out on June 9th, and you said, "Why did I start learning about Bitcoin? I'm a first-generation immigrant whose family lost everything in the 08-09 financial crisis. I wanted to wake up and learn how the central bank sausage is made so that I can build and protect my savings and think about a secure future for my family." So there's a lot to unpack there, but I'm wondering specifically if you can kind of break down that story, 08-09, how your family was impacted specifically by that.
Yeah, so I was in college. My family immigrated here and really just started over. My mom was in her late 30s. My dad was in his early 40s when they moved to a new country. They waited like 20 years to be able to immigrate to America. And it was always my mom's dream for our family to be here. And it was like middle class jobs. They started over. My dad became an electrician. My mom became a bank teller. And all they wanted was to just have the middle class American dream, allow their kids the opportunity to go to a good school, to go get an American university degree and have maybe a nice vacation every year and just like live a good, humble life. And in 08 or 09, right before the crash, my mom had tried to start a business. So she took a second mortgage out on her home. And literally a couple months later, the whole world collapsed. And so we lost everything. And I think I didn't really understand it. I was in college. I had taken on some loans that I'm so grateful I've paid off. And I realized that, I think it was then that I realized that the system's sort of rigged. Like there were some people who knew that this was going to happen. There were some people that profited off of it. And most of America didn't realize what was coming. And I feel like we're almost in that same place, and we were even before the pandemic kind of headed off this cliff. And we've been in this bull cycle that has to end at some point. But it seems like we don't have recessions anymore because the government just prints more money and all of it is just debasing our currency. And I just wanted to learn more about it because I don't have a finance background. I didn't major in accounting or economics or finance. So I needed to kind of seek out that information for myself. And it was a really interesting blend of, I have street knowledge. I've been in the trenches for 10 years as a journalist, meeting people from all walks of life, interviewing everyone from the politicians and the celebrities to the homeless people. And I've seen how some of these policies have impacted people on a day-to-day, scale. And the pandemic really was what did it for me, though. I went really deep down in the rabbit hole, wanting to understand the financial markets, the economy, what money printing was. And ultimately, it was what made me have so much conviction in something like Bitcoin.
You mentioned a lot there about, getting into Bitcoin and some of your path to, going down that rabbit hole. But was there an initial moment that you recall that first sparked that interest? And sorry, when was that as well, just from a timeline standpoint?
Yeah, so I'm also one of those people, and I've interviewed some guests about this, where the first time I bought Bitcoin, I didn't get it. I didn't understand it, but I'm glad I bought. I bought for the first time in 2017. And the only reason I did is I was living in Northern California at the time, going to the Bay Area all the time. I knew someone who their friend worked at Coinbase. And so they were talking about crypto and Bitcoin. And I just was curious about it. I was like, what is this? I thought if it does have legs, then it's something that I'd like to own a little bit of. I mean, it was already expensive. It was several $1,000s, but I ended up doing a story about Bitcoin for my local newscast. I worked at an NBC affiliate up in Northern California at the time. I did a story on like a Bitcoin ATM at a local mall. And again, I didn't take the time at that point to study it and research it, to really understand blockchain, to really understand Austrian economics and some of the reasons behind why it was created or why it has a value proposition. So I regret that. I wish that I had gone down the rabbit hole then. And so my rediscovery of Bitcoin was when the pandemic hit. And I thought, something's wrong. They're going to print a whole bunch of money. We need a new store of value. And I went down the rabbit hole with like the Bitcoin Standard and listening to all the people that I eventually interviewed on my podcast. It was one of the reasons why I wanted to start a podcast. So
my understanding is you read the Bitcoin Standard 3 times. Why is, in your opinion, that essential reading for anyone who wants to get into the Bitcoin space?
Well, Saifedean is such a good writer, and I think that we're lacking a financial education in this country. I know it's something Anthony Pompliano talks about a lot. I completely agree. And I'm one of those people where I have a master's degree and I didn't know what the history of the central bank was. I didn't know about Bretton Woods. So what I loved about Saifedean's book is it really breaks down the history of money. And it's fascinating because I love history. I think it's fascinating to go back in time and read about, the first forms of currency that people were trading, how the Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire debased their currencies and what resulted, and how, World War I and World War II impacted our monetary policy now. And so just seeing it play out and getting that context was really fascinating to me. And the reason I read it multiple times is because I wanted to absorb as much as I could, so that my goal is to help educate people at this point. And since I'm not an economics professor like Saif, I really need to study it a little bit more. So the more you read something, I think the more you retain and you're able to discuss it. And so, yeah, I've read that a couple of times and some other books.
I think it's not just your country. We're in Canada, and it's the same thing. There's just such a lack of financial education for youth growing up. Like, why is this not a part of our educational system? I don't know, but there's got to be other places, probably most places in the world too. And you have to wonder if there's something intentional about it, or if the people who make those decisions are so dumb that they can't see the great idea around educating everyone on what is arguably one of the most important subjects we all need to know so well. I don't know. It's just, it's crazy to me.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And I think it's great that one thing that happened with this pandemic is more people got interested in the financial markets and investing, even if it was because of the meme stocks. I think it's great that people are starting to search out that knowledge for themselves. And you could get, a lot of what I've learned is just from YouTube and listening to these great interviews. And I wanted to absorb people's knowledge myself by speaking with them. So I think we're in a great time right now because there's so much information out there. You don't even necessarily need a degree. You just have to be curious and, seek out the right people that have the information that you want. And
What do you think about the government handing out paychecks and then people putting those paychecks right into Bitcoin? And maybe for some people, that's their first entry into Bitcoin, taking that $1,200 paycheck and buying some crypto with it. What's your thoughts on that?
I think it's great. I am a big proponent of people getting Bitcoin, obviously. And if they had bought with their first stimulus check, they'd be happy right now, I think. But I actually, for one of my network stories, when the whole GameStop, AMC, the meme stocks was in the news with Wall Street bets, I did a story and I interviewed a guy who did exactly that, only he put it into GameStop and he made tens of thousands of dollars. And it was just great. He's this middle-class guy who just had a baby and decided to just take both stimulus checks, put it into GameStop and a couple of the other ones, and it paid off big time. And how could you not be happy for him, right? He gets to buy his family a new car and kind of stick it to the man. So yeah, I think it's great when people invest with a little bit of, studying and research and not just gamble, because that's sort of the problem I see with some of the altcoins. But I think it's good. It's good to invest.
So speaking of that, of altcoins, because a lot of the guests that you've interviewed on Coin Stories have been Bitcoin focused guests, I guess you could say, are you a Bitcoin maximalist?
I'm not a maximalist in the sense that everything I'm worth is in Bitcoin. But I only have Bitcoin and Ethereum. I really have done the research on, Bitcoin, and I agree with the people that say that the other altcoins are, they're a little bit more risky in the sense that some of them could be speculative bubbles. Some of them have monetary policies that could be changed and altered. And I don't want to buy a coin where all of a sudden they could just create 500 million more, right? And so I don't know, it's like anyone can create a coin, and there's such an established network and history with Bitcoin that I trust. And as far as the smart contracts that I see some potential with regarding to Ethereum, I see some potential, but ultimately I just believe Bitcoin's the king.
Have you explored decentralized finance at all and utilized any of the tools that are now available with some of these projects and protocols?
No, that is an area I'm curious about and would love to learn more about. So if you have resources for me, please let me know.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's, for for anyone who's interested and starts going down the path, typically people start with Bitcoin, not always, but typically, then they move into Ethereum, and Ethereum is, amazing in its own ways, but really it's when you, at least for me, what got super interesting was when I started exploring the actual real use cases that are available today around decentralized finance and how empowering that can be. So I really suggest checking it out and just playing around a little bit. And like you said, is it probably more risky than something like Bitcoin? Yeah, I mean, absolutely, it probably is. But, play around with a little bit of money where to risk it isn't, if you were to lose it, it wouldn't change your life or anything like that. And then go play around with some of the tools that are available, because it's crazy when you can take some Ethereum, go deposit it into a protocol like Aave and borrow crypto against it and take out a loan, all without any middleman or banker. I mean, it really is a wild thing that you can do that in this day and age. So go try it out.
Yeah, no, thank you. Well, I do find this whole space fascinating. And one of the guys I interviewed, Jimmy Song, he called it like the Wild West right now. We're at the infancy of all of this technology, and that's what's so exciting. And I'm grateful to be in the space and so early, because it's such a positive community in general. And yeah, there are people who are super passionate about some of the altcoins. Like I get all these messages right now being like, you need to go into Hex or whatever. I don't have time to research.
As you know what, time is like the biggest issue in this space, I feel like. And that's funny because we talk about it being in its infancy, it's still young, and yet it's ever growing at such a fast pace. It's already so hard to keep up with, to either go and actually utilize these different protocols and the tools that are available, or just to do some research and try and understand them. They all have differences and pros and cons, and it's hard to follow. You really got to pick, one or two that you're interested in, dive in a little bit, see if it's worthwhile, and then do you sink a whole bunch of time into it or move on to the next one? It's a difficult game to play.
Agree.
One of the things that's super impressive, Natalie, is the fact that you launched Coin Stories this year, and you've had some incredible guests on the podcast already. And the question is, what have you learned from those interviews? So you mentioned earlier that part of your education process with the journalism background is by interviewing others and having those conversations directly with them. So what are some of the top things you've learned from conversations with Pomp and some of the other guests you've had?
Well, I love hearing origin stories. My other podcast is also about that. And I honestly was inspired by podcasts like How I Built This with Guy Raz, because I just love hearing, how people built their success and their careers and what obstacles they overcame. And I've always loved like rags to riches stories. And so I think for me, the most fascinating part was really just the human side of these people, because before they were big people on Twitter. They have, a big following. They're huge advocates for Bitcoin, but like, why? Who are they and what got them to a place where, regardless of their background, I mean, a lot of them do have a finance or hedge fund or something, economics background. Like, why were they convinced that Bitcoin is a great store of value or a pristine savings technology or future global reserve asset? So the most fascinating thing for me has really been learning each of their individual stories, how different and unique they are, and what it was about Bitcoin that kind of convinced them that it has so much potential and can offer so much hope to people and could be the solution for problems like wealth inequality. And it strengthens my conviction, because a lot of them ultimately it's the same reason. All of them talk about sort of the sense of the system is out of control right now with fractional reserve banking and our money printing policy that's been going on for so long, and the devaluing of our currency, inflation that most people, the mainstream media typically say it's transitory, or it's non-existent, it's good for you. They, weren't convinced. They didn't believe that narrative. And just this like hope for something better. Like I love that Bitcoiners really strive for something that could bring about the best of humanity. Like if we have a sound money where we didn't have to worry about working ourselves to death just to survive, where we could put money away in the bank and you don't have to trade it every day and stress out about whether it's going up or down or options. You could literally just put it away and have a longer time horizon and think about things you want to do and care about. And those are the things that really resonate with me. And so I've been really grateful that these guests have taken their time to talk to me.
You really have had some great guests on your show so far. And I'm curious who's at the top of your wish list to interview in the future.
So I had my dream guest for this week, Michael Saylor. So I'm so excited. I got the Hornet Lord himself.
Awesome.
So I'm super excited. I mean, Safe was a dream guest. They were literally part of the reason I went to the Bitcoin conference. I was determined to meet them and get them on the podcast because there's so many men in this space. There's not a lot of women, and there's also not a lot of people that are more from a general background as opposed to finance. And so I really wanted to help spread the word to the general public. As far as people I still want to interview, I would love to interview the Winklevoss brothers. I would love to interview gosh, I have such a big list. I have coming up Lynn Alden, so I'm super excited to talk to her and start getting women on the podcast. I would love to get Mayor Suarez from Miami. I would love to interview the president of El Salvador. I would, all of them, like everybody in this space I want to interview. So I'm excited to keep rolling.
That's one of the cool things we found as well, is that there's no shortage to that list. Like we have a long wish list, and it seems to be growing every single day as you learn about new projects or new things come into the news and that kind of thing. Question though, in terms of with career stories and coin stories. So I've noticed the frequency of the Coin Stories podcast seems to be a little bit more as of recently, but there was, I think in June, a career stories. Do you plan to keep them balanced equally, or is more of the focus on coin stories, or how do you go about when episodes are released?
Yeah, so I wish that there were extra days in the week. Time is literally the only thing I need more of. So basically I've just shifted my focus right now to coin stories because I'm so passionate about it. And so it's a very similar format, but it goes more into the philosophy of Bitcoin in addition to the origin stories. So career stories is a little bit on pause. I have some episodes and things in the can that I will eventually get out there, and I'd love to do more interviews, but I just want to focus more on this space. And I think that there is sort of a gap or a need for more women and a need for more just like general information because if we believe in Bitcoin, we obviously want mass adoption. We don't want sort of this atmosphere or environment where it's really difficult to understand or it's overly nuanced. And, I don't know who said this, but it really resonated with me, where you don't need to learn exactly how to put together a car, how a car works, but you can trust a car and want a car, right? So no one needs to go that deep into the rabbit hole where they know every single thing about blockchain and hashing and all that. But I think everyone should have a general knowledge of monetary policy and like the history of money and Bitcoin and what problems it wants to solve. So I focused more on coin stories, and I have one episode that comes out a week. And then I also have my other 2 jobs. So I don't know where I find time for everything.
Ulf, do you realize that our audience has either been watching or listening to this episode for 20 minutes?
20 minutes? They should probably subscribe.
Yeah, they should subscribe, and they should like and comment and hit that notifications bell.
Oh, and did you tell them about the NFTs?
That's right. We have our own NFT for our OG supporters. This is a way you can support our show, help us bring you continual great content. Information on that is below. So one of the things I'm wondering, Natalie, is, you talked about the balance, and you've got, your work with Spectrum News and your journalist job, but just in general, the industry of journalism, do you think it's going to be impacted by blockchain technology? And if so, how do you see that happening?
I'm curious about that. I'm not really sure. I mean, the industry is changing so quickly, and I do find it really fascinating how it's evolved with like citizen journalism, and really, anyone can have a show now. I mean, Anthony Pompliano is a journalist. He's like a host in this space, and people grab their cell phones and they go outside and they create the content that's aired. It could air around the world. And we rely on people's content a lot, and so I find that really interesting. So I don't know how blockchain will impact the industry, but I do think we're at a very interesting like evolutionary point with regards to media. It makes me sad that it splinters so much into these sort of highly divided political, groups or people. I hate when people accuse me of being a journalist, like about fake news, bias. Like it's hard to hear that. I've worked in this industry for 10 years. I really, really care. I'm like a perfectionist and I want to get the story right and I want to get both sides and I want to tell the truth. And so, it's just, I don't know what the future is. I just try to keep up with what's happening on a day-to-day or year-to-year basis. I mean, the technology's changed so much just from when I was in school. So I wouldn't be surprised if blockchain had some component to it.
I was watching an interview you did previously, and you mentioned that your mom worked in banking for a large part of the time since immigrating to the States. And so what has that conversation been like with your family? Have they all become Bitcoiners, or are they a little, I don't know, skeptical of the whole thing?
So my mom is reading the Bitcoin Standard in Polish right now.
Nice.
For that, I'm trying to orange pill her.
Yes.
But no, that hasn't happened. My parents are of that generation that's just very old school traditional, and they like the sense of like something physical. So they're big believers in gold as a store of value, but like Bitcoin is still out of reach for them. So I'm hoping the book, The Bitcoin Standard, will help. But my conversations with my mom have been just fascinating over the years and have definitely influenced me because, she went into the banking industry here in the 90s where someone's interest rate was like 8% on a savings account or a CD. I mean, you would actually get some money back as opposed to now you'd have to put it in stocks or assets to get that kind of return. And so seeing the other thing she sees on a daily basis is literally, and she's talked a lot about this with me, is just looking back on her time working in banks over the last 20 years, how much less money people have today and how much they're really struggling and living paycheck to paycheck. And I was actually listening to Anthony's first business, the Best Business show today, and he was like listing statistics about how 78% of, I believe, Americans, I'm pretty sure it was Americans, not multinational, but 78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. And literally it just confirms what my mom's been telling me. She's like, people used to have money in the bank, savings, and now it's like they're going overdraft fees, this, that. And so it's been a fascinating, perspective to have where she kind of sees it on a day-to-day basis. She doesn't necessarily know who they are, but it's like people are not able to save the way that they used to just 20 years ago. What's wrong? There's a problem.
Yeah, 100%. And what about your colleagues in the journalism space? Because I moved out of the journalism industry about 6 or 7 years ago, and I go for lunch from time to time with some of my former colleagues, and I try to tell them about this crypto space, and for whatever reason, they look at me like I'm talking about a pyramid scheme or something like that. Do you have a similar experience?
Yeah, it's kind of a mix. I think for the most part, people just kind of chuckle at me or feel sorry for me that I'm going to lose all my money. They're kind of like, oh, Natalie and her Bitcoin. Some of them are invested. In fact, I remember going out to dinner with a couple of girls that I work with, and Bitcoin at the time, I think it was last fall, so it must have been September, Bitcoin was in the low teens, I think. And I said, you guys, you should really look into it. And they're like, I don't know. And then literally 2 of them, I think, bought when Bitcoin was like around 60. I'm like, where were you guys? I mean, you FOMO'd at the wrong time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's like a mix. I think a lot of people think I'm crazy and don't understand what I'm doing and that I'm gambling or something.
You know what though? Me and Wade were just having this conversation around how like the narrative of Bitcoin shifts so quickly depending on whether it's on this epic run or if it's on this epic fall. And that's really all it takes. When things are like booming in crypto, it kind of, those who aren't, and I'm talking to those people who aren't involved, who don't own any crypto, they don't own any Bitcoin. And when things are booming, they start hearing about it, right? They catch little whispers. They hear something on the news or something they follow about how Bitcoin's just going ridiculous and the price is booming. And then they get interested, but they still don't buy. And then the moment when they hear about, oh no, Bitcoin's crashing, this big fall, then they're like, I'm glad I didn't buy. It is a scam. And it's like, no, it is volatile. Like, you can't get away from that. It's a volatile investment as of today that will probably smooth out at some point. But it's just funny how those who aren't actually invested themselves can get so emotional around the things they hear and just believe any little thing. Because those of us who have invested in crypto, I mean, we know it's volatile. And buying that, when things have been on a crazy run and they're at such high prices is just never a good idea. But if you hang on and you have that long-term mentality, that, set it and forget it mindset, eventually everything's going to be all right and it'll all come around. Not financial advice.
Yeah, not financial advice. No, I agree with you. And I think one of my favorite things I heard, Michael Saylor say in one of his podcasts is, if you're buying Bitcoin with a time horizon of less than 4 years, just don't do it. I mean, really, you have to be in it for the long haul, or if you're going to be concerned about this volatility, then maybe you're not keeping enough in the bank right now because you're overly concerned about it. So yeah, I believe that you should just, like you said, set it and forget it. And my conviction is strong. I even bought when it was, in the 50s. I bought more. I buy all the time my dollar cost average. And so, yeah, of course it stinks when it drops so much and you could have had more. You could have bought the same amount and had more. But at the same time, I still think it'll go to 100 and even higher than that. So it'll be cheap at the price I bought it at. So I'm not worried about the volatility. But again, like, I'm not looking at it as a trade, and I'm not looking at it as, I'm cashing out next year.
So that might have answered this question I'm going to ask you, but do you have any theory? So different people think different things about bull run cycles, and some people, talk about a 4-year cycle, or maybe it's a super cycle. Do you have any theories, or like you said, are you just, hey, I'm dollar cost averaging, it doesn't matter what happens?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. That's something I've been asking my guests a lot, because I was curious what their thoughts were in terms of how much the situation in China with the mining, as well as Elon Musk's tweets and some of the narratives about climate change creating some FUD, like what impact did that have on ending a little bit of the bull run, and whether we're going to still stick with the stock to flow model. For me, it's been interesting because I think part of the bull run was that retail driven, sort of FOMO, emotion driven buying experience. And I think even, Plan B has tweeted some of the statistics about the majority of the sellers have been people that have owned Bitcoin for less than a year. Like, it was really those people that just came in and then sold right off so they sold at a loss, which is just so silly to me. It's so interesting. They didn't clearly understand Bitcoin. But I think the thing that worries me or makes me kind of curious is when I talk about Bitcoin to average people, they'll come back and say that it's already too expensive. And so they're interested in crypto and they invest, but they're picking all these altcoins. And it's like they're doing it with the hope of getting rich, or hoping that one of them like takes off and turns into Bitcoin 2.0, or, turns into kind of a Dogecoin situation where you go from less than a penny to 70 cents. And they really are looking at it more as gambling or short-term trading, and they don't understand Bitcoin. And so I think that must have impacted this cycle, as well as those investors coming in, maybe not having researched enough, and then pulling out and trying to put that money into things like altcoins or maybe in the stock market. Because the stock market's crazy right now. So I don't know. I'm not sure if that's like a theory, but it's something that I think about and it makes me curious.
Do you agree with the stock to flow model?
I hope so.
Me too.
I think I think we're still in a very good position. I don't think we've deviated too far from it. And I also think it's astounding that he put that out at the height of the bear market, and in what was it, 2019 now? And it's been right along, just like, even if we didn't have the pandemic, I think we would still be at the price that it was predicting. So, yeah, I have a lot of hope and faith in it. Could it be wrong? I mean, yeah, I even Plan B said that, but I do believe in it.
One of the things you mentioned earlier in the conversation, Natalie, was attending the Bitcoin conference and meeting some of these people who eventually became guests on your show. What was that experience like? I mean, had you attended previous crypto related conferences? Was that the first one? What did you think of it?
That was my first conference and I loved it. I thought it was the best, most amazing experience. I brought one of my best friends who doesn't know a lot about crypto and now she's fascinated by it. I just thought it was so great to be in a space with so many like-minded people who are passionate about just writing the system and making it more fair and equal, and so passionate about this idea of bringing back sound hard money or a solid store of value. It was fascinating to hear the panels. One of my favorites was on Bitcoin and morality with Robert Breedlove and Jimmy Song and Guy Hirsch. I loved that panel. I loved the panel with the Winklevoss brothers and Pomp. I loved Rand Paul's speech. I mean, I just thought it was so great. I loved Michael Saylor and Max Kaiser. So I had a lot of fun. The only thing I was sad about is just not seeing more women. Like, it was so predominantly male. And I just wondered, like, where are the women at? Because we hold so much of the spending power, like especially millennial women. Some of us are making more than the guys, like
100%.
We've got some money and, we shouldn't just be spending it on mimosas and handbags. We should be investing it. So I thought that was interesting. And I mean, it was certainly also a little bit intimidating because I'm very new to the space in terms of just creating this podcast and trying to really understand the finance world and economics. So I'm like intimidated, but people have been very welcoming and kind to me. Like, literally everyone that I've messaged has responded and been open and wanted to help me understand better and spread the word. And so that's why I think I've been able to get these great guests. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful.
That's awesome. I'm so jealous. I haven't been to a conference yet that's crypto related, and I can't wait to go. So I'll be to the next one that I can make it to. Hopefully this pandemic and the rules for travel ease up soon enough. But on the topic of women in crypto, Wade and I have done our best to interview a good number of women, and it's been great to have so many female guests on our show. But the truth is, it is quite male dominated, as with many tech spaces. But since you've been following it, and with your recent experience at the Bitcoin conference, have you seen any change? Do you feel like more women are getting involved, even if it is still small? Or what are your thoughts and experiences and what you've seen in that area?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that it's growing. Women are more interested in it. I can't tell you how many of my girlfriends text me. I mean, they really want to understand it. It's just, it feels like such a hurdle in terms of the knowledge, because Bitcoin it's very nuanced. You have to sort of embrace learning about all the technology, blockchain, but also the history of sort of how the money system works. And I think for people, they know it's going to take some time, and that maybe makes them a little bit, hesitant, because time is so precious with everyone. And I do see more women getting into the space. It was really funny though, at the Bitcoin conference, I forgot to mention this because it was super obvious how the ratio was skewed, because normally like you go to a bar in LA or Manhattan, there's a line for the girls' bathroom and it could be like a half an hour long. And you're like, oh my gosh. At the Bitcoin conference, it was the guys waiting in line. Like, we just went straight in and the guys were around the block. Like, sorry. Clearly the message has not fully gotten out. But I do think it's growing in the space, and I'm trying to connect with those women. yeah, I would love to meet up with them and learn more from them. And I think it would be great to get more people just excited about the space in general, regardless of their background.
Awesome. Well, Natalie, this has been a great conversation. We've really enjoyed it, but we like to end every episode of Show Me the Crypto with the same 3-question segment for every guest. We call it You Had Me at Crypto, and Alf's going to ask you those questions.
All right, you ready?
Yeah.
Great. So question 1, who's your favorite person to follow in the crypto space?
I would say Michael Saylor. I love his little quotes every single day that he changes a little bit to be about Bitcoin.
That is awesome.
Nice. All right. Question 2. What will the price of Bitcoin be 10 years from now?
10 years from now? Mm-hmm. Ooh, I'm going to go with 2.5 million.
I like it.
There we go.
That is
that's aggressive for the
compared
guess.
to what other guests have said.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I hope you're right.
I've always been waiting. Like, come on, guys, you got to go higher.
Everyone says 1 million.
Everyone says 1 million.
Yeah.
I like this 2.5. I like where your head's at.
Nope, it's going to be more. Now, here's the thing. I don't necessarily know how much the dollar is going to be worth. So
yeah, fair point.
2.5 might actually be similar to a million, but yeah, I'm going to go for the moon. And if you look at how much it's appreciated every single year, and if you multiply it, I think, 2.5.
All right.
Love it.
Question 3. What is the most underrated coin or project in crypto?
Bitcoin.
That's fair.
I still think in terms of mainstream, it's underrated. We don't really need to talk about a lot of the other ones until people understand the big daddy, the Bitcoin. So I'm going to go with that.
That's awesome. It is funny how even being the most popular, the original, the OG, Bitcoin I agree. Like, it's underrated. It's still under the radar for so many people. So, hey, nice pick.
Yeah. Dollar overrated, Bitcoin underrated.
Yeah. There we go.
Exactly. Well, Natalie, you're doing an awesome job in the space. You're creating really good content. We definitely enjoy it. And we appreciate you taking the time to chat to us on this episode of Show Me the Crypto.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to Show Me the Crypto. Please make sure to subscribe as well as rate and review this podcast.